Okay, hello again, everybody. So we're back. Lily and we are going to start a new, kind of sub-series on this channel in these reviews that we do. So we're doing the thing. We're going to review every single Star Trek movie, every one of them, in order of when they came out. I guess you could say sequentially or by year. So that means that we're going to start with Star Trek, the motion picture, the first Star Trek movie. So we're doing it. Isn't this exciting?
This is very exciting for me. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Just like, this is my ballpark and I'm ready.
Yeah. And so a number of these films, I've seen some of them. There's some of them I've never seen. I've never seen this film. Never seen it. Really had no idea totally what it was about, which was kind of a fun experience for me, which we'll get into when we talk about this movie. And we were talking like off air, like there are some films I've seen. So I had a friend who was really into Star Trek, like basically in the 90s. And so I've seen the majority of the Star Trek, the Next Generation films. I've not seen, was Nemesis, right? Nemesis is the last one. Yeah, I've not seen Nemesis. I've not seen Nemesis.
Flaw.
Yeah. The fatal final.
It was the nail in the coffin.
Yeah. I have not seen that film, but I've seen all the other ones. And I've seen off and on some of the original cast films. So yeah, some of these will be brand new for me. Totally new experience like this film. Some will be kind of a rewatch, but overall it's going to be kind of a cool experience. So I'm excited.
I'm very excited for you. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Cool. So, all right. So yeah, let's get started. Let's talk about this film, get into the plot. So one of the things I want to say is like from the start, I feel like I had an idea of like what they were trying to do, which was kind of interesting. So like this film starts with sort of like a operatic overture, at least the version that I saw. There's some music before the film starts, and that was telling to me because it felt like what they were trying to do was like kind of evoke the sense of like a movie like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
That's kind of what I felt. And the other thing too is like I forget the guy's name. It's something Turnbull or something like that. But he was the guy who was the basically you would say the VFX supervisor for 2001.
I think it was Trumbull, yeah.
Yeah, Trumbull.
Trumbull, Turnbull, something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Very influential guy in terms of like special effects. He did 2001 and he also did this movie. So feels like that's kind of what they were going for. So I can kind of like, I was like, okay, I can get behind that. That's kind of cool. Yeah. And so then, at the beginning of this movie, we see a trio of Klingon spaceships, warships, right? Like they're actually some type of.
They're birds of prey. I don't remember. I don't think these might be D7s or early D7 designs. I'm not gonna lie, my starship knowledge is very thin, but I do love me some Klingon ships. But yeah. These are the new redesign. We have not seen Klingons like this before. So I think probably I would have loved to have seen these new Klingons for the first time because these are the Klingons design that I have always really, really loved. So I would have loved to have seen that for the first time. Like the outfits are very vastly different. Of course, the makeup design, because before in TOS they were kind of sweaty looking, dark skinned, mustache twirling villains. So these are new, updated Klingons.
Yeah. So this is like you're saying, this is like the top of the line, fresh off the lot. This is the and which kind of underscores this conflict even more, because we see them, they're going to this cloud thing, and they're like, prepare to fire, and they fire their torpedoes on it, doesn't do anything, and they're about to get attacked basically like right away. And so then there's Epsilon 9, this like Starfleet monitoring station, is like basically seeing what's happening, and they see this cloud thing um, and they watch the cloud destroy these Klingon ships, and then
Yeah,
they
which
are
is
tracked.
it's
Mhm.
it's a really big deal because like I think they chose Klingons specifically because Klingons have a cloaking device, they have really advanced weaponry, and like if this thing can take out 3 birds of prey, like that's pretty intense.
It's like unstoppable, right? Basically,
Mhm.
yeah,
I mean, if the Klingons couldn't fight it, we're fucked.
yeah, exactly. We're not gonna fight our way to stop this thing. We're
Mm.
gonna have to, I don't know, maybe reason with it, something like that.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. Is this thing sentient? I guess we'll find out. So the cloud, and then the Epsilon station, like, oh, where's this thing going? Oh, it's on a collision course for Earth. Great.
Dun dun dun.
Now, the visuals in this were pretty cool. Like when they show the cloud and stuff like that, it's very cool, especially for the time, and especially the techniques they're using. It has a certain kind of quality to it that's different than the way that we see visual effects now. Because they were like the type of techniques they use, that he would use when he does these type of effects, are very unique. Because it's like, yeah, it just looks different than like what, you know, when you're trying to do early computers, and it just doesn't age well. This, it's like, okay, it's almost like a take on what we could be seeing. Obviously now we're kind of spoiled because of the technology we have. I mean, you can render something in basically like a video game engine that looks extremely realistic. But they had to, like, that stuff that they were, you know, you get a camera and then you're shooting inside of some kind of little thing that makes it look like the universe, and it's really cool, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it shows its age, but I don't think it looks terrible. I think it actually looks really, really pretty for the time period and how old this movie really is. Because this came out in 1979. This was also competing with the visual effects of Star Wars. And they were just like, we got to have it look just as good.
Yeah, exactly. So this came out before Empire. And it you know, I'd say that it's kind of comparable. And again, like I was saying, they're really trying to do like the 2001 Space Odyssey kind of thing, like especially like the way, you know, this film loves depicting ships and other crafts.
Yeah,
like
this film, it loves the ship.
Yeah, like we'll get to this one shot of the Enterprise where they're like, we're gonna show you every angle as much as we can.
That model at the time was the largest model of the Enterprise. Like Robert Wise was talking about it, because I watched a little mini documentary in preparation as well, where he was talking about how he's like, I saw the model for the original show and it was so tiny. He's like, you can't see anything. He's like, so I said, make it bigger.
Yeah.
So they made it twice as big, if not bigger. And they put a shit ton of lights inside it to make it seem like people were inhabiting it and everything like that. And he was just like, just make it bigger. And so they did.
Yeah, I mean, the model is great.
Yeah, the model is gorgeous.
Yeah. So we get some really cool stuff. And so, you know, like that's kind of the advantage of doing a film like this, is they get to do that stuff and like really kind of up the production value.
I think they threw a lot of money at this movie too. They threw a lot of money at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably this. I'm sure that this movie was more than maybe like 2 seasons, at least a season and a half of the show. In terms of
because the budget for the show was like
yeah, it was just like cardboard. It was all cardboard. It was a back lot somewhere. You know, whenever they fought an alien, it was a dude in a suit with like something on his head.
Yeah, and I think the corridors of the original show were just like plywood painted. Like it was very cheap. Like, you know, Gene Roddenberry famously wrote to Isaac Asimov, and Gene Roddenberry had a very long feud for a while. And at one point, Gene Roddenberry sent him a letter being like, you know, nobody is letting us do what we want. We are fighting to keep this show on the air every week. We are convincing people not to cancel us. Eventually, they became friends. which I just love that so much. But they were literally just scraping, reusing costumes, makeup, old latex, like just constantly scrounging for whatever they could.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to the actors that they kept coming back because they thought that what they were doing was important. And
yeah,
especially
it
Leonard
was.
Nimoy. Yeah, it was important. They were reaching a lot of people.
Yeah, and especially like, again, another thing, like we're in the age that we're in terms of like sci-fi, fantasy, comic book stuff is like kind of insane. And when you think about like where they were at in 1966, even 1979, I mean, it was a little better, but not a lot better. Like for a long time, the genre was just seen as a joke, basically.
It was seen as a joke, yeah.
It was either pulpy, kind of like John Carter stuff, or it was, something other, but it was never seen as art. It was never seen as good. It was like, oh yeah, like that stuff is ridiculous, and they never took it seriously.
No, you were made fun of it. It wasn't cool to like this stuff yet. Now it's extremely cool to like this stuff. It is very popular, and if you don't watch something remotely close to it, people kind of look at you sideways now. Like, it's our time now.
Like you don't watch the MCU, you don't watch,
Mm-hmm.
you don't watch Star Wars, you don't watch Bubble. It's like, back in the day, like
most people still know who Chewbacca is. Most people still know who Spock is, but they don't necessarily know who they are.
Yes, yeah, it's like permeated the culture, even if it's not like something that is a story that totally connects with them. It's still out there as an archetype,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's pretty powerful.
I mean, it makes sense that I can only imagine what their argument was over him and Asimov, which is funny too, because like Asimov, I don't know. I mean, he wrote hella books and stuff, and it's writing a book is different than like having to deal with a network.
Exactly, and I think that's what Roddenberry was trying to get across to him. And eventually, I don't know what their compromise eventually was. I think Asimov was criticizing the show, and that's how it kind of started. And I think they eventually found some kind of common ground, and Asimov kind of came around to like, actually, I think it is worthy sci-fi. I think he probably was. I mean, I don't want to put words or thoughts into Asimov or anything, but he probably saw it the way most other people who weren't interested in it saw it. It's just like, oh, it's just sexy aliens and a cowboy in space. Like, it's probably just that.
Yeah, because it comes off as very campy. It comes off as very like, I don't know. Surface level, like it doesn't feel like it's intellectual,
shallow, maybe. Overly sexual, just hippie-ish, maybe even in some ways. What do you mean they're not fighting in space? What do you mean they're not military or anything, even though they basically are? They have a fleet.
Yes.
They're pretty
powerful. The show is not about military conflict. It's it's about like
it's about resolving conflict. And it's like, resolving conflict, we're post World War II, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I mean, the power too of the show and the movie and anything Star Trek is like the way that it pushes those ideas about people and about different types of people. Like, I mean, the fact that there's like aliens on the show, like even in this movie, there's like different races of aliens. That's the type of stuff where it doesn't really hit. I don't think it hits people right away, but like depicting that in a positive way is like that's a trailblazing type of thing to do in any medium of television, movies, books, anything, because the central theme is like, oh well, different types of people and things need to work together to achieve progress, right?
Yeah, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And that's one of the things I feel like that makes Spock such a relatable and like great character, is because he's half human, he's half Vulcan. You don't know where he's a stranger in a strange land most of the time. People constantly want him to be one way when he is not that way. And I feel like people really globbed onto that character because maybe some people felt like, well, I'm the child of two people with completely different backgrounds. I don't always know where my place is. What world do I fit in? You know, well, the world I was born in doesn't want me, and the world that I wasn't born in doesn't want me. What do I do? Kind of a thing. And that's the beauty of Star Trek. You know, he's an alien with pointy ears and strange eyebrows and a terrible haircut. But he's telepathic. He is exceptionally emotional. He is very grounded. He's intelligent. He's wicked cute. Damn. Even with that haircut and those eyebrows, Leonard Nimoy was still hella cute. And he was very, very sympathetic.
Yes.
Spock is an incredibly sympathetic character. He mind melds with literally anything. Spock will mind meld from a rock to an alien ship to a whale.
Yeah.
Because.
Yeah, exactly. And so speaking of Spock, so like the next scene we get in this is we get to see Spock on Vulcan, and this is really cool. Like, talk about great effects, like the way that they show the planets and stuff. When wherever he is on Vulcan, it's like really cool because like I feel like there's a gas giant and then another kind of moon thing. It's very cool.
I believe they filmed parts of that at Yellowstone.
Yeah. I mean, it does look like they're in some kind of a canyon or something. It's very cool. Very well done.
Vulcan's so cool.
Yeah, effects. Yeah. And so he's preparing to do the ritual. What is it called? Kolinar. Kolinar. Okay.
Yeah, Kolinar, the ritual of purging all all remaining emotion.
So he's preparing to do this ritual to purge all emotion, but then something goes wrong, and they're like, oh, and he's like, oh, wait, hold on a second. So pretty much like it's the cloud, right? The cloud kind of connects with his human side, and so he has some kind of emotional connection with it. Is that kind of what happened?
It's connecting with his telepathy for sure. With his side of telepathy. And I think because Spock is part human, that empathetic side and curiosity, I think, reaches out. I don't necessarily know if it's the being reaching out to Spock or maybe they were just crossing Ethernet cables or something.
Yeah, he got the Wi-Fi signal, and then he got
the Wi-Fi signal. He got a message from a number he didn't recognize, but was curious enough to go check it out. So he's just like, I can't complete this really sacred, important ritual if I'm this in tune with another being. I have to go and check it out. I need my emotional side for this kind of. And one of the things I love about Vulcans is that you can't insult them. You can't. So even the priestess is like, yeah, he doesn't want to do it. He has to go. Yeah. He has to go and seek out his own path. Like,
yep, yeah. She was like, he will not achieve his goal with us, and so they leave the necklace with him and they just walk away. So at the end of the original series, was there some type of, I guess, scenario where Spock kind of went home,
where he just peaced out? Honestly, I don't remember a lot about the final episode of TOS. I forget how many years have passed since the end of the show. But you get the sense that their 5-year mission ended and they eventually went their separate ways. But no, I don't really remember Spock being because it was so episodic. Anything that would have affected him in one episode would have been gone by the next.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really say. He's just I would just chalk it up to him being an older Vulcan, and then this is a rite of passage that he would have eventually had to have taken regardless, because it's even referenced in the J.J. Abrams 2009 film that Spock will be taking the rite of Kolinar, purging all emotion, but then the Vulcan Council pisses him off and he's like, peace out, Cub Scout.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, that's good to know. Yeah, because, and another thing too, our ideas of like, just as a general note, our ideas of like television, what television is, like today in 2021, are very different than what they were back then as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring up this idea of like things being very serial and like each episode not affecting the next. I forget when it was, but like the idea of like creating a story arc within a season is actually kind of newish idea. I mean, now it's everything, right? Basically every show there's some multiple story arcs where characters change over the course of the season.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, with this, it's just like, oh, well, today we found some aliens and they, you know, I don't know, something. We got to talk to
Spock
him.
mind melded with a rock. We have no idea how that will affect him later on, but it's scrubbed away.
Yeah, exactly. And the next episode is like it never happened.
It's like it never happened. And I think, I don't know, I feel like it was probably procedural cop shows that eventually came along and needed some more grit and maybe some more drama that was going to follow them. Because those started becoming incredibly popular around the 60s, 70s, I want to say. There was one in particular that my mom loved watching. I can't remember what it was called. It was not TJ Hooker, by the way. She hated it. But I feel like people just need that extra layer of drama, because if it's not Leave It to Beaver anymore. It's not the Donna Reed show. It's not Star Trek anymore. It's, you know what's interesting though? I feel like I Love Lucy used to reference things that happened in past episodes a lot. Which was interesting because it was another one of those procedural sitcoms that episodic. She got locked in the trunk. Yeah, exactly. But they reference little things like that, I feel like, which made it a little bit more special. And I think people caught on to, hey, we just need a different format. TV needs to evolve. You know?
Yeah, totally. So basically they've sort of, in this film, they've kind of created some things that happened in between the end of the series and the beginning of this movie, right? They're like, okay, so Spock, he went back to Vulcan. You know, we're going to figure out what happened with Kirk, and we'll see what happened with the rest of the crew, but we're going to kind of get the gang back together in a way. And so that's part of the conflict of the movie, is like, okay, how are we going to get everyone back together? Because, you know, that's what we want to see. We want to see them all on the ship again, on the Enterprise. And so then, you know, we get to see Earth and San Francisco and Starfleet. And what I liked about the scene was, like, everyone seemed very chill at Starfleet. Everyone's wearing like sandals. It's like, man, it's a nice summer day in San Francisco. This is really, really cool. And again, they do some really good work with the visual effects. Like, you know, you could tell some of it was like kind of like a, you know, usually they have like a painting or whatever. It's like a real set and then like a painting in the background. But then you see like a shuttle kind of land, and the shuttle look good. So Kirk meets with Commander Sonak, who's a Vulcan, and he's like, hey, so I basically requested that you be appointed as the science officer on the Enterprise. And, you know, the Enterprise is in final preparations to leave dock, and it needs to be ready in 12 hours, even though it's going to take 20 hours. So I don't care. We gotta take off. We got to do this mission because this cloud's going to hit Earth, and I'm the only guy who can, you know, do the thing to save the world.
I'm the only person who can do any of this. No one else has the same amount of experience or more than myself.
Yeah, this guy Kirk just like been looking for the opportunity to get back in the saddle, and he found it. So yeah, then Kirk talks about like he's like, I'm gonna meet with Admiral Nagura, and it's gonna take 3 minutes, and I'm gonna be appointed captain of the Enterprise again. So be ready. Following that meeting. Okay, so this Admiral character, did we ever see this person before in any other TV show before this movie, or is this just like... Okay.
I doubt it. Admirals in Star Trek come and go very quickly and are very rarely a steady seen again character, with the exception of maybe Enterprise, a couple maybe in what's it called? Next Gen. And more recently in Discovery, but pretty much every admiral that Picard talks to on a weekly basis is a different person every time. There's a lot of admirals, apparently.
They just like slot him in and out.
Literally, like they literally just slot him in and out, whoever was available at the time. There was a lot of very inconsistent admiralty. Maybe they just kept retiring. I don't know. But, no, I don't think. I doubt we've ever seen Admiral Nagura in the flesh before. I think he's probably just a name.
Okay. Yeah, because it seems like it's
really cool.
Yeah. I was like, is this a human? Is this an alien? I have many questions, and we don't know. So, was Kirk at least I guess the last time we saw him, was he still captain, or had he been promoted? Or was
I don't
he...
know if I don't remember there was any talk of him being promoted, because I don't know if they expected the show to be canceled.
Yeah.
Because remember, after the show was canceled, they had a very brief animated series where they were still on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So the 5-year mission was technically continuing.
Mm-hmm.
But the 5-year mission into deep space, I'm assuming they would do it for 5 years and then they would come back and be reassigned to something. Or if he had a really good track record of not losing anyone, or just the amount of civilizations he had discovered, the amount of data he brought back, would eventually lead him to having a promotion of some kind. But I think Kirk got addicted to the chair and the excitement and the adventure. And this Kirk is I don't particularly like this Kirk in the motion picture.
He does some things.
He's very selfish, and he is very narrow-minded for the majority of the film. Which, once we get to Wrath of Khan, he's back to being himself. But he's very irresponsible in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so because they're presenting him like, basically the conflict with Kirk in this film is that he wants to go back to being a captain of the Enterprise again. Yeah. And so he's been doing this other thing and he doesn't really like it. And so, like you said, he's basically seeing this as an opportunity for him to get what he wants. He wants to be captain of the Enterprise again.
If anyone's going to go and meet this fucking thing that's going to attack our planet, it's going to be me.
Yes.
Mic drop. Give me the keys.
Yeah. And so it's not really about Earth. It's about, I can get back to the Enterprise. Which is an interesting predicament to put the character in, right? Because they're decided, okay, we need some conflict. So how can we create some conflict with Kirk? Well, let's have him not be the captain at first and have him kind of, almost going backwards,
Yeah. He uses his authority in a very destructive way. Yeah. In a very, like I said, in a very selfish way, which they use that same story thread in Wrath of Khan, but they actually do it in a better way, a much, much better way. Yeah, he can't handle being grounded. I forget what they said he was doing, but I can't remember what he was doing before he decided, I'm just gonna kick this guy out of the captain's chair.
Oh yeah. Woo! Oh man, I can't wait to talk about that. Okay, so then he gets on the shuttle to then go on to the Enterprise, and he has this talk with Scotty, and Scotty's like, Captain's been, she's been going under 18 months of repairs, and we don't have enough time. He's like, well, it's too bad. We just gotta go. Like, there's this cloud's coming, and blah blah blah. We have to do it. So again, more people are like, and this comes up later. Like, all of this, the fact that again, this has to be a rush, is going to become a problem for the crew of the Enterprise. Yeah. And so Kirk is like, I did it, Scotty. I got him. They gave her back to me. And Scott's like, oh, I'm sure they didn't give it back to you easily. Yeah, he's like, I convinced Nagura to give her back to me, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but like you said, again, very kind of selfish. He's very like, I want to get what I want for myself, and then I'll figure everything else out.
Even though I have no idea where anything is in the ship.
Yeah, it's been, what do they say? It's been, like 2 years since he's flown? I believe it's something like that.
He hasn't logged any space flight in about 2.5 years, something like that. Which for a Starfleet captain that's a long time. Yeah.
So he's been up in an office.
Grounded, yeah.
Yeah. For a while. Okay, so then we get these like vanity shots of the Enterprise. I mean, every angle, you get to see the back, you get to see the side, you get to see the front, you get to see underneath. They show you every single conceivable angle of
look at these the Enterprise. Coordinate cells. Oh my god, it's a lot. It's a very long vanity shot, and I get it, but this is one of the things that makes the movie called the Star Trek motion sickness. This is one of the reasons. It's because it just keeps going and going and going. And just when you think it's done, like when the camera finally does some actual like movement, like following a character around the room, it's just like, oh my God, what's happening? Or when a character finally speaks, you're so excited. It's a very slow, sluggish part of the film. And I appreciate what they were trying to do, but it just doesn't stop.
Yeah. And the problem is, like, so there's these shots of the Enterprise, and then it's just like Kirk, just like,
like, lots of reaction shots of, you know, William Shatner being told, yeah, you're staring at the Enterprise, but it's not really there. And he's just like, okay. Ooh. And Scotty being like, that's my fucking ship.
Yeah.
See that? See that port nacelle? I told him where to put that. Probably not, actually. But, you know, I'm just... You want to see the warp core? She looks good. It's just, it's so, just like, can we please move along because I'm falling asleep?
Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate because, like, I think that's what makes it kind of not work is that there's no interplay. There's no, there's just nothing that we get that really, like, can resonate with us to make us really, really feel something. And so it's it's just this spaceship.
It's just dead air. It's just dead air. And like the thing that kind of doesn't necessarily save it, but thank God Jerry Goldsmith came up with such a beautiful musical score to really make you feel like, we're going back. Yeah, we're going back, and it's wonderful. And the score was so loved by Gene Roddenberry that he used it later on for Next Generation because he was like, this is fantastic. But thank God for the musical score. But you hear the entire musical score in this one scene, and it's long. It's a long, long scene.
Yeah. And then Kirk boards the ship. He comes onto the bridge, and everyone's like excited to see him. You know, the crew is there. Sulu's there. Chekhov's there. It's Uhura, right? Yeah, Uhura's there. And they're like, where's Captain Deckard? He doesn't know. It's like, what?
I like how they know.
Yeah.
I like how they know, but the captain, this super excited, fresh-faced guy who is down in engineering helping. He's not even on the bridge, which is where, yes, he is supposed to be, but it shows you a little bit about his character that he wants to be in the nuts and bolts of this ship. And he's down there helping engineering when he could just be kicking back and waiting for them to leave. And Kirk's like, oh.
Well, I'll go and tell him.
Oh, don't worry. I'll go tell him. He'll be fine. He'll be fine, right? He'll be fine.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Yeah. So that was the thing. That's like, wow, that's pretty messed up. Just like, the fact that everyone knew except for him. And like you said, he's over here working his ass off, and he's like about to get some bad news.
Yeah, and Kirk is such a freaking chatty Cathy. He's telling Sonak, he's strong arming a freaking admiral, which we don't actually see that scene.
Yeah.
But he does. He's like, it's only gonna be a 3-minute conversation. I got this. He blabs to Scotty. He goes onto the bridge, and everybody knows.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a hero's welcome, like, when he comes back. It's really funny.
And, like, I'm sorry, but I feel like Decker should have been in that conversation with Nagura. Like, I feel like he probably should have been called down, got a transport to Earth, and like, hey, we need to have this conversation. It's nothing personal, bro, but get the fuck out of the chair. Oh, God.
Yeah, I was like, what? He did what? Like, I was like, man, that is messed up. Yeah, and so then he goes down and tells Decker, and it's, I mean, he takes it about as well as any person would take it, right? It's like, oh, so you went over my head, and this was all about you. And
your vanity.
Yeah.
And your self-righteousness and your selfishness being a prick. And Decker makes some really great points. You haven't logged any spaceflight in 2 years. You don't know the redesign of the ship. Kirk basically gets lost at one point. Like, he has to ask a yeoman where an elevator is. Or where a turbo lift is.
Yeah. But, hey, I mean, when you're Captain Kirk, James Tiberius Kirk, you get to do what you want.
I get my way and I fuck who I want.
He's the space cowboy. So
yeah, he is.
yeah, so that happens, and then so we get another scene where they're trying to transport a couple of officers, so it's Sonak and someone else, up to the ship. Malfunctions, and both of them die.
Horrifically.
Yeah.
Horrifically. Transporter malfunctions are sometimes, this is one of the few times where a transporter malfunction is actually like, it's shown in other episodes and stuff, but the actual horror of what could go wrong is actually shown, and it's messed up. It is very messed up.
So is it like does it like scramble up your body kind of a deal?
Essentially, a transporter breaks down all of your molecules, and then it has to recalibrate them or reconstruct them in another location. So if something goes wrong with that, you are literally being torn apart down to your atoms, and you are consciously aware of what's happening to you, and you feel everything. Which is why when the guy on the comm says, we got them, but what came back didn't live very long. What came back, not who came back. What came back was literally a blob of disgusting fleshy mass, basically.
Some random assortment of body parts.
You wouldn't be able to tell who was who at all. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell who was who. And one of the interesting things about the scene is that pretty much every character that had any amount of screen time or dialogue that was important in the original series is in this movie. You have Nurse Chapel, who comes back, played by Majel Barrett. And also Gene Roddenberry wanted her to play a cat lady at one point, and she was like, yeah, I'm not doing that, sweetie. You're my husband, but I'm not doing that. She was like the only person who would say no to him. And you have Yeoman Rand, who is actually one of the women who is operating the transporter, and who is supposed to be like an on-again, off-again love interest for Kirk in the original show. She was actually in a really bad place when this movie came out. William Shatner was one of the only people who kept in touch with her, and basically told the producers, can we give her some work? She really, really needs it, and that we would really love to have her back. It would make everything feel very like back together again. And so I really like that he did that, because she went through some really bad shit, and it was nice. It was nice to see Yeoman Rand there, because she had this huge beehive wig that she wore on the show. It was massive. So that's one of the things that makes this movie kind of like really nice, because you see Yeoman Rand, you see Nurse Chapel, and they're back again. It's nice.
Yeah, it's the whole crew is back together. That's basically kind of what this movie is. And then he even says, "Oh, I forget what's her first name. It's like." Starts with J, right? Rand?
Janice, I think.
Janice. I think he says like, "Oh, Janice, it wasn't your fault." What happened in the situation?
But this is the price you pay when you're trying to rush a ship to be ready when it's not ready.
100%. And now they don't have a science officer.
Whoops.
This guy is dead, and then and he's like, "Oh, tell the Vulcan consulate about his death." It's like, that's it.
We still gotta go though. I still got a schedule. Yeah. My planner is booked.
So send them a message, but I gotta go. Sorry. And I think not much later, basically, Decker gets appointed as the science officer.
Yeah, they kind of changed that role a few times over the course of the movie of who's actually doing what.
Yeah. Okay, so then we get this signal from Epsilon Station that the Enterprise is watching, and so like the whole crew is like watching them. Basically, they do a FaceTime with this Epsilon Station, and they're giving some readings, and they're talking about like what the cloud is, and the cloud just like consumes them and kills all of them, live on television. And yeah, that's pretty unfortunate to have to see. And he's like, turn it off, cut
it.
Yeah. Yeah, Kirk is like, okay, cut the feed, cut visual off.
This is something that the movie does very coldly, is that yes, Kirk is just like, oh, send our condolences to their families, but I gotta go. This movie does not handle death very well. Horrible death. Like, we don't know what those people on Epsilon are feeling, or like they're obviously terrified, and then they're gone in the blink of an eye, and they're just like, oh, It's really sad. But we got to go. It's this constant, and we'll get to another technical death later in the film, but like death is
Yeah.
kind of just sad for a minute, and then we got to move on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not taken as seriously as it is in later films.
Yeah.
It's just literally, okay, this happened, but we got to get to A. We got to get to B. That happened, but we got to get to C. We can't.
Yeah.
There's no lingering on the loss that happens at all.
Yeah, which really sucks. But you know, Kirk's got this thing he's got to do. Yeah, it is very cold in the way that it deals with these real people. You know, real scientists too. Like, and they're all, I don't know.
Yeah, they're on the front lines. They don't know what's going on. They're horrified. They're terrified, and it's just like, we'll go see what killed you.
We're gonna find. I think it's in the scene too where they get it. We get a time amount. It's like it's gonna hit Earth in like 54 hours, and they gotta get there in about. I think it'll take them 20 hours to get there. Something like that comes up at some point soon. So then he's like, "Oh, our condolences. Turn off the feed, and now let's keep going."
Pretty much.
Okay. So then Ilya comes aboard the ship, and she's going to be the navigator. Now she's what planet is she from? I don't know if I caught that.
Ilya is from Delta. She is a Deltan. It is expanded on, I believe, in the novelization that their species are incredibly sexually advanced. Big freaking surprise there. And
sexually advanced.
I think they might mention that she has some sort of telepathy, but I'm not entirely sure. She's virtually just there to move the characters along. She really doesn't contribute much to the crew. Not sure why they need a navigator when they have a helmsman who also acts as a navigator the majority of the time. That's why Sulu is there.
Yeah.
Unless this is Delton space they're heading to. I don't know why she's there, except to be hot. They really
put her in some heels later on. Like
I don't know why she was wearing shoes. I don't know why what eventually happens to her requires her to wear shoes, except they want to show off those gorgeous legs that she had. This actress was actually a beauty queen. She was Miss India. They told her she had to shave her head, and she had Robert Wise take out insurance on her hair in case it never grew back the same way again.
Mm.
And she kept her hair in a box on set because she was very, very sad that she had to shave her head. Every day.
Okay.
But yeah, she's a Deltan, and she has taken an oath of celibacy because if a human man were to have sex with her, his head would basically explode. Except Decker, he's got a magical D. We don't know why.
Yeah, that really kind of like blew my mind when she like just flat out stated, "Oh, I my oath of celibacy is on record." Like, well, what?
Why do we need to know? Except that she's unobtainable. She is so hot that she is that unobtainable, and if you do her, you'll die. It's just like, really, Gene? Like, really, writers? Like, we needed that. It's very much of its time.
Yeah, that was a little perplexing to me. So basically that's the thing is like no one, any mere human
can't touch
gets in bed with her, their head explode. Okay.
Again, except Decker.
Yeah. And it seems like they have a past. You know, he's like very excited to see her, but you know,
it's a little awkward.
It's a little awkward, yeah.
I think it was a hump and dump.
Yeah.
These two characters, Decker and Ilya, are actually the archetypes for Commander Riker and Deanna Troi. They have a very similar first reunion. They have very similar dialogue, and they're basically the same people.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, if it works, it works, right? I mean,
it works.
So, were there any Deltans in the show before, or was
I honestly cannot remember. I don't know if she was made up purely for the film, her species, or if maybe it was mentioned in Deltans were mentioned in passing of some kind. I feel like she was probably made up purely for the film.
Yeah, and do we see more of their species like in later films and in later shows?
Probably not, because it's so embarrassing to have a species that their whole purpose is that they're sexually advanced. Yeah. Like, that's literally it. That's it. I think it was probably just a little too embarrassing at that point. I wouldn't bring him back.
Oh man, this yeah, Star Trek in a nutshell.
Star Trek has done like the Orions were basically the exact same way. Like the female Orion give off like these really powerful pheromones, and dudes can't resist them, and they pretend to be enslaved to lure people in. They're basically pirates. The women pretend to be enslaved by their male Orions, but really the male Orions are at the bottom of the food chain, and it's a female hierarchy.
It's all kabuki.
Yeah, and eventually over time, Star Trek has given the Orions a little bit more substance and less gratuitous sexuality, and actually made them fleshed out real characters instead of just these green horny ladies.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like that's another kind of thing of like the, you know, there's all these different eras of like what sci-fi was, you know, like we were talking about. There's the pulpy stuff, the John Carter, and you know all that, where it's like, you know, you see the cover and it's like a dude fighting off a bear, and there's like a woman who's like half naked. Yeah. I mean, that was sci-fi for a long time. Yeah.
Her boobs are almost on the verge of hanging out. Her hair's like messy, but it's like sexy beach wave messy, and you're just like, what is that? She probably has like some dirt on her, and she's like always like crawling behind the man who has like a sword or a chainsaw.
Yeah. He's standing there with a sword,
or
fighting a leopard or something. Yeah, or a gun. Yeah.
He's got the bulging muscles, the giant Adam's apple. He's just like,
and you know, that kind of stuff is just a callback to that. Like that was, and again, you know, all the writers were male. Oh, what a
almost
surprise!
All of them, yeah.
Yeah.
they had a couple female writers. One of them, I can't remember her name at the moment. She actually recently passed away, but she had to write under an assumed name.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was, I think she was probably constantly being shut down a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing too. So like, it's kind of crazy. Like even like, you know, talk about J.K. Rowling. Like she even used, like it's even up to today. Like people have to use, if they're a woman, they have to use these like pseudonyms, or like they have to like not show their first. It's like, what? I don't know. Anyway, publishing is like another bag of worms. But yeah, like there, that was a big thing in the like, you know, mid-century and early 20th century sci-fi. It was just this idea of the, you know, hey, well, let's use sci-fi to like think of our sexual fantasies, and like, you know, people, you know, like, oh, what if there was a civilization and, you know, and they were like super sexual or sexually advanced?
But you can't have sex with them or you'll die. It's just like,
yeah.
She takes an oath of celibacy. Ooh, nice. That's hot. It's like, why?
Yeah, it's...
She's basically a hot nun. Okay, she's basically a hot nun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of a throwback to those kind of things. So it's interesting to see, like, especially the way that our ideas of sexuality and just like what we do in sci-fi, how that's changed. Yeah, because like, I don't know. I mean, today now I feel like the genre has become very commercialized, so maybe that's kind of a downside.
It's a little saturated.
It's a little saturated, yeah. But at least there's not as much of this overt kind of like, you know, exploitation of sexuality, or at least the need to do that, because it's like, well, you could, I don't know, find some other outlet. Although the thing that comes to my mind when we talk about this is like, the first thing when you talked about these pirate people where the women are like, oh, we're enslaved, help us. Yeah, the Orions. The first thing I think of is like a Game of Thrones version of Star Trek, where like, you know, they go there and it's super sexual, like explicit and super violent. Maybe not super violent, but maybe super sexual. That's the show we probably will never get. That's not going to be on Paramount Plus anytime soon.
I mean, they have showed boobs already once on Star Trek, and they're swearing a lot. So you never know. Okay. I mean, they were Klingon boobs, so I don't know how you feel about that. But but even Klingon Klingon women are very interesting to me only because they get it. They're like, oh, they like these. Let's prop them up, baby. And female Klingons use it to their advantage. They're like, okay, eyes up here, but do what I want. You're my bitch. They're very dominating. They're very, very dominating, and they will not let anything get past them. There's actually a pair of sisters that consistently reappear throughout Next Gen and Voyager, and they are just menaces. They kidnap Geordi at one point. They just do all sorts of crazy shit. Geordi. And they kidnap Geordi at one point. I think that might actually be in a movie. But these sisters they're hot Klingons, and they know it, and they're just like, yeah, we're gonna use it to our advantage. Look at my boobies. Look at them.
That's very cool.
Or it could just be the stigma of dudes wanting hot aliens. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
the stereotype. Excuse me.
Because like, I was thinking like of Star Trek 09, like where Uhura has that roommate who's the green girl.
She's an Orion, yeah.
Oh, she's an Orion. Okay, all right.
I believe she's an Orion, yeah.
Okay, now it's starting to make sense. Things are starting to click a little bit.
Well, the green women, like before they had a name, I think they were just the sexy green women. The first time you see someone who is supposed to be an Orion, she is literally giving a lap dance. She's literally giving Captain Pike like a lap dance in a fantasy setting. It's all a fantasy being projected into his mind. And one of the lines of dialogue from the pilot while she's gyrating around and everything is like, think of it, an entire species that just wants to be dominated. And it's like, oh my god, like that was said. It's just like, oh my god.
And again, this is what, like 1965 or something.
Whenever the pilot first aired with Captain Pike, and he's just like, this is fantasy.
And that's what's so crazy. Like that's what sci-fi was for a while, right? And again, and like you wonder why people thought it was so silly. It was, like, and even like some of the most famous book, like Stranger in a Strange Land, is like about people go to Mars. There's people on Mars, and they're all polyamorous. Like that's the idea of that whole book, basically.
I mean, hey, and good for them. There's instances of polyamory in Star Trek as well. In Star Trek Enterprise, the Dr. Phlox has several wives, and his wives all have several husbands, and their husbands have wives, and it's all a community. It's a community of marriage, essentially. And at one point, one of his wives comes to visit him, and she is into the engineer. She's like, I want him. and the engineer comes to Dr. Phlox and he's like, dude, your wife is like into me and I'm really uncomfortable. And Dr. Phlox is like, that's great. She has really good taste in men. I think you should go for it. Because that's his culture. He's just like, it's not a problem. We're all parents to each other's children. We're all husbands to each other's wives. Like, it's not a big deal. Do my wife. I want you to.
Yeah. But again, like sci-fi was a way to explore these ideas because they were not talked about in polite society. So yeah, you want to see a lap dance? We'll go watch Star Trek, and you'll see some green lady do a lap dance on television. I guess that was the way to get it to be okay.
I guess so.
Yeah. So it's funny. It's funny, like the what the genre has brought us. But anyway, so. Next, we see Dr. McCoy. He shows up. They transport him onto the ship, and he does not get scrambled into little itty bitty pieces and killed. Thankfully,
he does not know.
Yeah. And then basically, we get this. It's kind of funny. He's like, "Oh, Admiral Nagura invoked the seldom used reserve activation clause," and Kirk's like, "Well, wasn't exactly it. It was kind of my idea." He's like, "Oh my god." Like, of course it was you. And Kirk's like, there's a thing out there. And Bones is like, well, why is any object we don't understand always called a thing? Like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, he's being very McCoy.
Yeah, he's being very McCoy.
Very neurotic. I don't want to be here. I really don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And he was probably on vacation somewhere. He had his beard. He was wearing his 70s like jumpsuit. And he was probably at the discotheque or something. He looks like he literally got beamed from the discotheque, and he probably had a drink and something. He was probably drinking and ready to take home some hot babe. And he was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, and then he was on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or he was like probably getting ready to go party on Ryza, or like going on vacation. He was probably in the Bahamas, and he was just like, oh great. He's got his big beard and everything. He was just
I love that beard.
I know, that beard was great. I wish he had it throughout the whole movie. That was so good.
I love the beard. And he's like, damn it, Bones, I need you badly. Great line reading. And then he's like, okay, Jim, I'm on board. And then finally they leave. Like, take us out, Mr. Sulu. And they fly out of the little dock, and we get some more like articulated shots of the Enterprise as it leaves. You see this cool like guy doing a spacewalk out there. He like does a backflip, I think. And that's it. They're off. So they immediately run into trouble because they try to warp. And okay, so I was a little confused by what exactly happened. So was there something?
Everyone was.
Was there a problem with the warp core? Because like again, they rushed this whole thing, and so it makes sense that something got botched. But then there's this other thing with the asteroid.
I think they went to warp too fast. Because there's like cruising speed, then there's warp speed, and then there's real warp speed, which is like, I think like 9.9, which I don't know if they had in the 23rd century at the time Kirk was around. But yeah, I think it had something to do with the warp. They warped themselves into a wormhole.
Yeah, they warped into there's something with a wormhole.
They warped into a wormhole that had a giant asteroid that they were going to crash into. And everything gets really warped and weird looking, which I don't mind how it looks. The thing that this scene was lacking was, again, a musical score, because it's all just very slow. We're gonna. You can't even understand what they're saying towards the climax of the scene, and it's so just. If there had been some kind of musical score to key you in on certain things, I feel like maybe it wouldn't have been that bad. But it's visually very cool scene. Story-wise, you could have cut down half of what happened. You could have made that a 2-minute scene instead of like the 5 or 7 gratuitous scene that it was.
It's perplexing. It's a little like, I was like, what the hell's going on? I hope she can.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be an exciting scene, and I was utterly bored. And this is probably the 3rd time I've seen this movie, and I'm bored almost to tears every time.
Yeah, it's just a little confusing, and then you just see this on the screen. You just see this thing, and then like a asteroid coming at them, and it's like, what the hell is going on? And then Chekhov's like, and you just can't understand what he's saying. And
the tension and drama that does happen in the scene, you kind of forget about a little bit. Like Kirk tells him to fire phasers, but then Decker's like, belay that order. And like rushes over to Chekhov, but it takes forever for him to get there. And it's like, shouldn't they have crashed by now? What is going on? And the tension and the drama is just not there. It's not there when it should be. It should be a very exciting scene, and it's just so boring. So then Decker is just like, oh, we need to fire photon torpedoes, but he's saying it like way slower, so you don't really get it.
It's stretched out over like a minute, so it doesn't really hit us well. No. Unfortunately,
it doesn't land well at all.
Yeah, because like basically what happens, right, is like the biggest actual thing that we the audience care about is that, again, Kirk, because he hasn't been on the ship in years, doesn't understand that you can't use whatever he told them to use. Can't use the phasers. Got to use the torpedoes because changes in the ship, and you would know that if you'd actually been flying the ship. But you don't, and you almost got us killed. So I have to intervene.
Which, honestly, is what a first officer should do.
Yes. That's exactly.
Just saying. And again, he's not really a first officer. He's not really a science officer. He's just there to be there. Like, he doesn't really have a position. So that probably throws his character out of whack a little bit, too. Because you're like, okay, why is he even still on the ship if Kirk is taking over? But he's not being, like... It would have been clearer in the dialogue for the viewer if he had been like, oh, but you can be my first officer because you know the ship so well. No, we're just demoting him to science. Does he have any credentials to be a science officer?
Who knows?
Exactly.
You know, that's the most convenient place for him to put him because the last guy got, fried.
Squelched. Yeah.
Okay, so then Will, Kirk, and Bones, like, they have a discussion, and basically they explain. Okay, Will's like, hey, look, if you use the phasers, we would all have died, so we needed to use torpedoes instead, and you would know that if you actually worked on the ship. And Kirk's like, oh, well, you saved us. Well, thank you. But okay, I don't know. He's like, next time, don't undermine my authority or something. Don't make me look bad, basically. And then Will agrees. I forget, they have some kind of a mutual
They reached some sort of they reached some sort of a compromise where Kirk finally, not in so many words, being like, yeah, I fucked up. I don't really know everything about the ship. You do. And he kind of asked him, okay, well, you basically nursemaid me through this, which is him basically being like, you have the better expertise of this new ship. I appreciate your counsel at this point because you did save the ship, basically. So at least they finally reached some level of compromise there.
Yeah. Which is good. Oh yeah, and then Bones shaved like immediately. That's the other thing too.
Yeah, that was fast.
Like he's immediately got rid of that sweet beard. How sad.
But he still got his nice 1970s jumpsuit and giant like gemstone or some shit.
Yeah.
With a big chain. He's just like, I'm such a pimp right now. I'm the pimpiest doctor on this ship.
That's the one nice thing about the 70s. Like, I really kind of like that whole, like, the disco, funk era. Like, people...
I was waiting for someone to go by on rollerblades.
Yes! Yeah. It's so crazy. That's one thing that never really had a Star Trek crossover was, like a disco. Like a disco.
Actually, there is a moment in Star Trek Discovery Season 1. They actually called the ship Disco. It's Discovery, but they nickname it Disco. Where they're actually showing the crew have a party, like an actual like fun, like that we would go to or something. I mean, not me because I hate parties, but regular people would go to, and there's actually disco. There's actually the Bee Gees playing on in the background. So there's a tiny little crossover there, which I like because I love disco music.
Also,
because of this, the movie is the victim of the late 70s. All the men's shirts have that deep V neck.
The deep V. Oh my god. Oh man. V was
everywhere.
As far down as you can see, and just
And Shatner changes outfits like 4 times, 4 or 5 times when it's totally unnecessary. And he looks. I like his more relaxation ones because he looks a little bit more like chill. He kind of looks like a cool captain. Like, I'm not like other captains. I'm a cool captain.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they got like the bracelets too that are on everybody's hairy arm and shit. It's just.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really funny.
It's great. I love it. The costumes are horrible and ugly, but I love it.
Yeah. Not the best, but hey. We get to see these nice V-necks, so.
They tried something new, and we sent it back, and they came back with something a little bit better.
Yeah. So then we get Mr. Spock boards the ship. He comes on the Enterprise. He's there, and he offers his services as a science officer. And yeah.
Straight out of Vulcan.
Yeah, he just shows up, and Kirk's like, yeah, re-enlist him in Starfleet and as a science officer.
No questions asked.
Yeah, no questions asked. So yeah, again, so it seems like again I'm guessing it wasn't like they basically the backstory of this film, right, is like Kirk was promoted, but he didn't like his promotion. Spock went home, but he kind of wanted to come back. I'm sure there was maybe something that made him want to come back to working on the Enterprise.
Yeah, Kirk and Spock behave like a couple that broke up and now are being forced to work together.
Spock is very cold.
Yeah, he's pretty cold. Well, I mean, he was in the process of purging all emotions. That's like a long process. There's like deep meditation that probably goes into it beforehand, and then the actual like ceremony. So, plus he's very like just as much as Kirk is driven to find the cloud thing, Spock is equally as driven, and he's not letting anything really distract him.
Yes, he's driven.
Excuse me, stop licking. Sorry, it's the dog.
he's driven to find this cloud thing because there's some kind of connection there. So
yeah, there's like something's compelling him.
Yeah, something's compelling him. That's what he's there for. He's not there to be friendly with Bones and Kirk. You know, these other guys. It's like, yeah, even it's kind of funny. Like, there's a couple. We'll get into a couple scenes later where there's always these like funny Spockisms where it's like, where he's basically like, okay, yeah. So the guys who were working here before I didn't do their job. They failed to do this, but now I'm going to do this. So then we'll be able to complete our mission.
Yeah, pretty much. So everyone sucks at their job at me, basically.
I just love that. He's like, yeah, so, because like, basically the other thing too is like, before Spock shows up, no one understands what's going on, basically. They don't understand anything that's going on with this cloud thing. They don't know what it's doing. They don't know what it is. They have some guesses, but they don't know. They don't know how to communicate with it. They know nothing. And yeah, so they're all kind of useless before Spock gets there.
Wait, they were just going to go in there gung-ho and probably get vaporized. At least Spock has had a brief connection of some kind with the cloud. So he has a better idea of what they might be dealing with. He doesn't completely know. He doesn't 100% know, but at least he has some kind of idea. He's like, something was reaching out. And if it was just a machine, it wouldn't have. So I think that's what kind of continues to compel him and his own curiosity.
Yeah, and so then Spock, Kirk, and Bones have a meeting, and, you know, again, Spock is very cold. Like, Kirk tells him, "Oh, sit down," and he's like, he basically doesn't do it for like a minute. And then they kind of have a chat about like what Spock's intentions are, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the cloud. There's some type of super intelligence there that's important to me, and I want to figure this thing out." So then, yeah, later they keep going into the cloud. They fly into it, and Spock is like, "Oh, I sense puzzlement. Have we been contacted? Why have we not replied?" Which is a good question. Before they can answer that question, they get blasted by some plasma energy. And it hits them, and Chekhov gets like, I don't know, electrocuted, maybe something.
Poor Chekhov. I mean, he is so underused in this movie. Walter Koenig was so excited, and then he just showed up and had to sit there.
Yeah, he had to sit there and get electrocuted.
He got electrocuted, and he got burned. It's like, who can we hurt but not kill in a scene? Chekhov, get over here. Yeah. It's always Chekhov. That is continued throughout the films. And oh yeah, poor Walter Koenig. He was so excited.
The funny thing too is, again, like you're talking about people dying, they're like very kind of like cold about it. Like this dude is like burning, like his flesh is burning. Oh, the medic is coming. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry, the medic. At least Decker goes to him though and offers him some sort of like he touches him and he's like, it's gonna be okay. The medics are coming.
He's holding him up.
He's holding him up.
So he doesn't collapse.
Kirk is like, is he dead? He's not dead? Okay, can we move on? Is there blood? It's just a burn. There's not even blood. Chekhov. Get the fuck, slapping him around probably a little bit.
It's like that scene
it's like that scene in Airplane when the lady's freaking out. Everyone takes turns smacking her.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see the line, and it's the whole.
Everyone's got a mace or a baseball bat or something. They're just gonna let this lady have it. Just like rub some dirt on it. Chekhov, you'll be fine. Yeah. So Chekhov gets burned. Sorry.
Yeah, Chekhov gets burned, and no one cares other than Will, who. I think Will's problem was that he just cared too much. He's too much of a good person.
He is a good guy. That's the thing. Decker's character is just like a solid dude who would he's always the designated driver. He exceeds expectations every time. Good son, probably. Charming, handsome, just like solid dude.
Yeah. So then Spock, I love this line. He's like, our previous transmission mode was too primitive to be received. I'm now programming our computer to transmit lingua code to their frequency and rate of speed. Basically, and I love too, like there's a part of this sequence which is basically Spock saying, you guys didn't understand what they were sending us because you were too dumb. So I am going to code a way for us to understand what they were saying and then respond to them in kind. So you guys all suck at your job. So I'm going to just do your job for you so that we don't die. And there's a point too, because like again, this is a communications thing, right? So then it there's like a cut to
would have been Uhura's job on
and like cuts her, she's like, what?
They undermine a lot of characters because honestly, if they had just a little more time, they probably would have figured that out. But because Spock is who he is in this movie, he's just like, yeah, you're all too stupid humans. Why didn't he just get his own ship? He could have just got his own ship and flown it in there. You know what I mean? But he wanted to be with Kirk. Obvious. They can't live without each other. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah. You could have just made the movie about Spock. You wouldn't have probably needed anybody else. Just because he undermines everyone.
He could have solved the whole thing. He basically does, honestly. So yeah, Spock fixes the problem. Well, then so he says, "Okay, I know how to fix it," basically, and then they another, what was it, plasma beam or something was heading towards them. He's like,
so yeah, some kind of plasma beam comes in the ship.
Yeah, so then, well, then basically, so Spock has to fix the problem before they get attacked by another plasma ray. So then they fix it. And then basically Kirk's like, okay, should we keep going further or should we not? And Will is like, no, don't go further. We can't take another attack. Spock is like, well, I think it'll be okay. For real, basically. He's like, I sense that it'll be okay. And Kirk's like, yeah, I'm going with Spock. Because I've never listened to you. Basically. Yeah, I've basically never listened to you this whole time anyway, Will. So why am I going to start now?
Exactly. Why should I start now? Shut up. Why don't you go be a medic to check off, you wuss? Yeah.
Basically. Yeah, it's like...
The adults are talking.
Yeah, it's like, you've now been demoted to head of the nursing bay or something. Oh, yeah, actually, that would have been on point because, what's his name? McCoy was saying, I need a nurse. McCoy was actually saying, I need a nurse. So they could have sent Will down there. Will's your nurse now. I hear he's really good. So anyway, yeah. So they get into the cloud, and we can see this depiction of whatever this is, a ship, an alien. At this point, at least for me, I was like not really sure or clear. It was very cool. Whatever it was.
It's very held cool. Up very well. This is not even the restoration yet. I cannot wait to see what the restoration looks like. And I still think this looks really, really good. And one of my favorite shots is like you see how tiny the Enterprise is compared to what they're inside. And it's very, very, again, it gets very gratuitous. Yes. But it's very, very cool looking. And it's very strange. Nothing seems to match. There's patterns and there's not patterns. There's structures and then sometimes it's all just round and there's spherical things going on. It's one of the most alien things Star Trek has ever offered. And I love it. I love the way it looks.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very well depicted. So then they get an intruder alert and some lightning thing goes into their ship. And it's like, is that the alien? Like, what is this thing? You know?
I feel like this kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week about Sphere. What would it look like? You know what I mean? Like they've already encountered plenty of, bipedal alien species that have 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, and, organs, and that can have some kind of verbal language. Well, here's an instance where it's literally light. It's literally just a beam of light. How are you going to communicate with that? And it clearly has no qualms with fucking shit up because it might not have a way of knowing that it will hurt you. It might not have no concept of death.
Yeah, it could be like a thing where it's sentient, but it's like sentient light or lightning or something, and then it just like says, "Oh, well, there's some other components that I can get inside of," and so it just does that.
Exactly.
That's just how it exists, and so it
no
wouldn't
concept of privacy, no concept of yours or mine, no concept of pain or anything like that. So that reminded me a lot of what we were talking about before, and I was like, "Hey, look at that! There it goes."
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why there can't be a sentient lightning strike. It'd be very strange, but it could happen. So then this thing, whatever it is, kind of takes control of their computer, and like Spock's like trying to turn it off, and like so is Will. Spock gets electrocuted, and then Ilya just disappears. She's gone. She's just gone. Gone. It's like, oh, okay, is she dead? She's gone. So
I think she's pretty much dead.
Yeah, unfortunately. So then they keep going in, and then they kind of get trapped inside of this thing. I don't know. Again, it's cool. You got to see it to understand, I guess, what it is. But they're inside of some kind of space where there's these, like, I don't know, I forget what they call it in the movie, but they're these kind of things that are opening and closing that kind of leads to
it's
another.
It's kind of like a fold. It's an opening, but it folds and inverts itself. It's very I love the design of it because it's an opening, it's a pathway, it's a doorway of some kind, but the way that it folds over on itself makes it almost look like it's fabric, and that it could be very like fluid in a way. Yeah, but I think, unfortunately, Spock calls it an orifice.
Yeah, maybe not the most accurate thing, but...
Ryan was watching it with me, and the thing kept opening and closing, and at one point Spock says orifice, and Ryan was like, really?
Yeah.
I was like, it's just a word.
It's Spock, too, right? Like, it's Spock. He's going to be clinical.
Exactly.
Okay. So then Ilya comes back, but Ilya is, like, very robotic, and then comes back as V'ger.
She comes back as a probe representative of V'ger. V'ger cannot communicate the same way that anybody else can, clearly.
Yes.
So V'ger, I shouldn't say he because V'ger's just a thing, technically. I don't even think they call it a he. Well, whatever. So it uses Ilya's likeness as an android probe thing to communicate and get their point across.
Yeah.
She's taking a shower when she shows up, like a sonic shower, and I'm like, why though?
Yeah, it's a little perplexing. But I mean, you know, I think we kind of talked about before, this character just serves to be sexual in a way, basically,
pretty much.
Right? And so then they start to question the probe. It's like, oh, why come to Earth? And, you know, V'ger says to find the creator. What do you want with the creator? To become one with him. Who is the creator? That which created V'ger. Who is V'ger? That which seeks the creator. Okay. How do you
around circles?
how do you like that logic, Spock? So basically she's kind of dead at this point, right?
Yep, she's dead.
Yeah. But she does recognize Will.
Yeah, so basically, excuse me, the Ilya probe is a copy in every way except that she's an android. Now, an android probe, but beneath all of those layers of mechanisms, there are memories that remain because they are a perfect copy, essentially. So basically, V'ger vaporized Ilya for some reason. And then turned her into a android sex bot, basically. So, but she does retain the memories of Will, most likely because, you know, that's that whole like true love conquers all. Even through this transition that she goes through, she still retains that memory of love, which V'ger does not understand. So that might be another reason why V'ger allows for those memories to possibly surface a little bit more. Because he doesn't understand it.
Yeah. So I forget, but at some point, like, this V'ger probe thing starts just going off about carbon life forms.
Carbon-based, they keep saying that the carbon-based life forms are infecting Enterprise because Enterprise is a technology, essentially. V'ger, in a way, as well. So it sees the Enterprise as something that they can use to continue their evolution. And the humans are basically just in the way. You're infecting it. You're ants to me.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't like carbon-based life forms. Yeah, which is really funny. In a way, it's like, okay, you ants can die, but I'll take your ship.
No, I'll take your ship though. Yeah. Give me your ship, bro.
So then Will tries to like get her to understand her past. Like they try to play, you know, space chess together or something, to get her to remember, and it seems like she remembers for a second, and then she X's that out of her mind.
It might be a little traumatic for the android version of her now too, because it's just like, I don't know what I'm feeling. This is really weird. I've been an android for 5 freaking seconds. I was literally born yesterday.
yeah, exactly. And so Will is like, you know, again, good guy Will is trying to like convince her to understand. Yeah, and like get her to understand like the usefulness of human beings, stuff like that. So he's like, he's trying to like, do the right thing, try and communicate and find a way to resolve the issue before the Earth gets destroyed by this cloud.
What's interesting about Decker's character, he's more original Kirk than Kirk is now. He is way more like the original TOS Kirk. He's very empathetic. He's very understanding. He points out rules and regulations. He tells his superiors when, hey, I don't agree with what you're doing. And he's into the pretty chick, basically. Because Kirk was like, he was the space cowboy, but the dude was sensitive as fuck sometimes. Really sensitive. I think way more than most people are willing to give, certain people in the Star Trek fandom are willing to give Kirk credit for. But yeah, that's one. Decker is kind of a prototype, young version of Kirk, but I like that. I'm okay with it. I've made peace with it. We needed that character.
Yeah.
So
meanwhile, this Kirk is, well, like you're saying, they're gonna kind of give him a arc over the next couple films. Yeah. But they made some choices with Kirk in this movie. So meanwhile, Mr. Spock has decided that he has sort of a plan for himself. So he goes into, I don't know, it's like the I don't know what you would call this area, but basically there's some. He's gonna get on. He's gonna try and go by himself to meet the alien. But he doesn't want other people to really know.
This is taking way too long. I'm just gonna do it myself because I'm still smarter than all of you people.
So he Vulcan nerve pinches some officer, takes him out, and then gets into a spacesuit and then thrusts himself towards the alien or whatever this thing is. So he gets out there, and again, some very cool stuff, very reminiscent of 2001 Space Odyssey for me.
This is my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I love this scene because it's not gratuitous in the way that the other scenes have been of like doing like these glamour shots of everything. There's dialogue that he's talking to himself, he's making mental notes, he's doing a log, and there's music there's a musical component to go along with it. And that is why this scene works so well, because what he sees is trippy as shit.
It's really trippy.
You don't need to be high. I mean, you can. It might enhance the experience, but you don't need to be like mute the movie and put on Pink Floyd and just go.
Yeah, it's really trippy. It's really trippy, but it's really cool. So and he's like, oh, I see a dimensional image of V'Ger's home planet. Maybe we should talk about that again later. And then he's like, we're inside a living machine. I must try to mind meld with it. And he does. It doesn't go well for him. It doesn't go well for him at all.
It's because Spock can't help himself. He has to mind meld literally. He's like, I want to meld. He's like, stop it, Spock.
Yeah.
Probably little signs all over the Enterprise being like, don't let Spock mind meld you.
Yeah.
Because he will.
Yeah. So then Spock's back on board. He's in the med bay, and then he's just like kind of talking about his experience. He said, I saw a planet of living machines, unbelievable technology. It was pure logic, but V'Ger is barren and cold. Mm-hmm. So V'Ger basically is expecting something from the creator, I think is what it's hold on, what is it? And so Spock's like, okay, what is the question? And it's like it knows what it needs, but like so many of us, it doesn't know what it is, what it wants. And so it's like this sentient machine that's looking for an answer to a question that doesn't really know what it is. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really powerful thing, but they kind of liken it to being a child.
Yeah.
Which is a little dangerous, right? Something that powerful is that intelligent, but it's also childlike.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I think kind of a beautiful sad sentiment that Spock thinks it's this magnificent, technologically advanced, superior, logical thing, but it's lonely. But it's cold and it's barren and it can't reproduce in the same way. It can't love in the same way. It doesn't know what love is. It doesn't know what empathy is. And it's searching for a reason as to why am I here? It's looking for God. It's looking for its creator, and it wants to know why it's there.
Yeah, and it thinks that its creator is somewhere around Earth. So so V'Ger is. So they figure out that V'Ger is sending something through an old radio signal, and it wants some kind of yeah. They figured that out. That's another thing that I'm pretty sure Spock figures that out, right?
Yeah, he's the linguist who spent her entire Starfleet career studying this. You know, it's Spock.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, like, if without Spock, I think the planet is destroyed, basically, right?
Basically. Although I do think it starts sending it in binary code first and then radio waves. And so maybe Uhura doesn't know binary. I don't freaking know. But, I mean, Spock is basically a computer himself, so.
And so then, they have this whole discussion with the Ilya part of it, and they're like, okay, we're going to go and we'll give the answer to you directly. And they have this, they have something where it's like, I forget what it was. I don't know if I made a note of it, but it's like Kirk's like, oh, well, I can give you the answer. And that would make me the creator. and the ship's like, that's impossible. You're not the creator. You're this meat sack of carbon. You're an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, V'Ger's basically, it's reached Earth, and he's basically holding the Earth hostage. And he's like, I want to know your carbon life forms infecting this planet. I want to know what my creator is. And it's basically throwing a temper tantrum. And that's when Kirk is just kind of like, it's basically behaving like a child. It's not going to kill us. Because he lies and says, I know who the creator is, and I can tell you. And that is like, V'Ger's like, okay, tell me now. Give it to me now. I want the candy bar now. And Kirk's like withholding that. Yeah, because he knows as long as he just keeps V'Ger at bay a little bit, the ship won't be destroyed, Earth won't be destroyed. So he's got to play this very, very carefully, which is where like more of original real Kirk like starts showing up finally. And he's just like, everyone clear the bridge. I think V'Ger needs a timeout. He basically puts him in a timeout. And it works.
It works. Yeah.
V'Ger's desperate to know the answer. He can't kill him.
Yeah. And so V'Ger's like, okay, I'll take you to, I guess, the center of my being, and then you give me the answer. It's like, okay, now we're talking.
Now we're making progress.
Yeah. So V'Ger takes them there, and V'Ger is Voyager? So V'Ger is the Voyager 6 probe that was sent by NASA. This is very Star Trek, I'd say.
This is so Star. This is not the first time Star Trek has found a probe like this before, by the way. This is not the first time.
Yeah. So, okay. So what exactly happened here? So basically, the probe went out in space, and they talk about like the probe had this programming, which was like to obtain knowledge and then give it back, and then send it back home, which is Earth. Which is why it came here. The creator was the evil, dumb meat sack carbonite.
Douchebags at NASA.
Yeah.
It's their fault.
Douchebags at NASA, yeah. And it basically, the Voyager succeeded in its mission, but it succeeded so well that it became this consciousness in and of itself that was actually beyond human comprehension, really. Beyond humans. So it really succeeded. And now V'Ger or Voyager is ready to transmit that information to Earth, but no one on Earth at this point can recognize it or receive it, because it's old technology. But yeah, it's even like deeper than that. Like V'Ger's like, no, I want to how would you put it? Like kind of.
I think V'Ger wants to know, because Spock, so they're in this little chamber, they realize it's the Voyager 6 probe. Spock hypothesizes that it must have fallen or been sucked into a black hole, ended up on the other side of the galaxy where this alien race of technologically advanced machines got a hold of Voyager, recognized it as its own because it's a machine. So they accepted it into whatever kind of culture they have. They made it more advanced. They realized it needed to go back. So they started it back on its journey. And over the course of this journey, because of the intervention of this machine race, it began to evolve. And over time, over hundreds and hundreds of years, eventually became sentient. But what is sentience without purpose? What is purpose without whatever you want to go along with that? So basically, they're going to try and transmit the data, but V'ger sabotages itself.
Yes.
And Spock is basically like, look, this thing has found its creator, but it's kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
As with, most finding your God stories tend to be. So he's like, it needs to evolve. It's stopped. It's gone as far as it could technologically. It needs to go beyond that. We have to allow it to evolve. As scary as that might be, it has a right to continue evolving because it is sentient. And Starfleet and the Federation constantly always reference how important sentience is to everything, basically.
Yeah, so V'ger needs to merge with the human.
Yes, and it wants to. It's not just being like, I need to. I want to. I want to know the next level that I am incapable of feeling because I'm just a machine right now.
Yeah. And Mr. Decker, he volunteers. And then he has this great line. He's like, as much as you wanted the Enterprise, I want this. And so, he does the thing. Him and Ilya, or at least the Ilya probe, kind of merge together, and we get this cool scene. It looks really cool. And then the cloud dissipates. We see the Enterprise. They all get back on the Enterprise, and they've, I don't know, ascended into some other kind of thing. And that's it. And we've saved the Earth, and Kirk got back the Enterprise, and everyone's back together.
And once again, they treat death in a very, very strange way because they're not. Decker and Ilya, well, Ilya is definitely dead. But Decker obviously ascends to a higher plane of existence, but he's not alive, and he obviously probably has a family. Kirk is just like, no, they're not dead. Missing in action. Well, you're going to have an explanation as to the circumstances as to why for their families? Because I'm pretty sure you're just like, missing in action. Case closed.
Case closed. We're done. Hey, now let's go on an adventure. Just go that way. Let's go that way.
I love how he tells Sulu, go that way. And Sulu should have been like, that's not a direction. Like, at all. I need coordinates in order to go somewhere.
Yeah.
I hated that freaking line. That way.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, Spock, did we just witness? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they could have. And it's like, well, you going to give me another direction here? Or do you want me to go into a black hole? You want me to go... What others? Yeah, I don't know. It's silly. Yeah, and then at the end we get this like postscript, like the human adventure is just beginning, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Yeah, that was cool. I mean, it was interesting. The whole Voyager thing, that was interesting. But it felt very Star Trek. It felt very Star Trek to me. Like big time. Like, oh, let's have something that ties back to NASA.
Exactly.
Perfectly Star Trek. Like. You know what? That works for me. So I thought that was interesting. I definitely there were some parts where it got a little dry and a little I don't know, too self-reflexive, and which was unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was cool. And yeah. So
yeah. I think it has its place within Star Trek canon, but you will find that this film is very rarely referenced or mentioned again after this. A lot of people consider Wrath of Khan the real first movie. A lot of people feel that way. And that this film is basically just a footnote in the Star Trek stumbling blocks. I still think it has its place because at its heart, it is a very true science fiction story. I think there's some really good science fiction elements there, not just visually, but just story-wise. Story-wise, I think it's very, very good. However, it lacks it lacks the camaraderie that you feel not only in the TV show but in later films. Like the dialogue is completely different. The way the actors are allowed to be these characters differently in following films is very, very different and much, much better. What are you doing? Sorry. And Wrath of Khan and the following movies just do a much better job of balancing the action and excitement and just cutting away this sluggishness that was just running rampant through the motion picture. When William Shatner saw this for the first time at the world premiere, like the final cut, they did not test this movie in front of test audiences. They had a set release date that the studio was not budging on. So they had no time to screen it for test audiences, which Robert Wise really regretted because he felt like they could have done a lot more with the movie. William Shatner saw it at the world premiere and said, "Yep, that's the death of Star Trek." Like, yeah, that's its demise. And
thankfully it wasn't the death, but it certainly, the good thing is like they did make some changes to future films to make them more palatable, to audiences.
For sure.
Which, needs to happen. I mean, every genre, every type of, because I mean, Star Trek is a strong property. I mean, it's been around, continues to be around. It's going to be around for a while, and yeah, I mean, we obviously there's some people who feel certain ways about the changes that have happened in Star Trek. Like, there's some people who have some strong reactions, but Star Trek continues to evolve so that it is relevant. And that's what they did then. That's what they're doing now. That's what they're going to keep doing. Just change.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, no one's going to want to keep watching. No one's going to want to. But what confuses me about these people who are so angry about the direction that Star Trek is going in, were the same people who were telling people to give DS9 a chance, or telling people to give Voyager a chance. These are the same people. They're just mad that it doesn't look the way they want it to look. They're just mad that the characters don't perform in the same way that the other actors did, and for actors from previous TV shows. And I'm just like, I'm personally just really over it entirely.
Yeah,
I have very little patience for it.
Yeah, totally.
Especially since no one's taking old Trek away.
Exactly.
You can still consume it. It's still there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole the hate watching thing. Probably not really something that I'm into, but some people, they just like they do the hate watching, and they like, oh my god, this is so terrible, and they just can't wait to like be online and get on that keyboard and just unleash their feelings.
If their criticisms were valid, then I would pay attention to them more. But you're being racist, homophobic, and sexist, and ignorant, and fat shaming. I'm not listening to you.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna listen to people who have nothing critical to say that isn't relevant to what's actually going on. Like, you can criticize story, that's great, but if you're just fat shaming people, then I'm not gonna listen to you, because you have nothing to offer that's good. Nothing that contributes to the all-round conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of funny because I feel like we're getting more Star Trek than like ever. Like, at this point in time, like, new stuff.
We've literally never had this much Star Trek before. Like, new Star Trek. Like, not just like a new Blu-ray re-release of The Search for Spock or something, which is cool, which is fun. But we're getting new adventures, we're getting new characters, we're expanding on different alien species, new alien species, and that's what it's about, to seek out new life and new civilizations. Not just to like barricade yourself with your DVDs and be like, this is what it really is. And it's like, that's kind of sad.
And it's moving forward. Like, the Star Trek story is moving forward.
Yeah, and there has never been this much money thrown at it before in ever. And I don't know. Yeah. People want to be mad about dumb shit.
People, So, I guess that'll be our review for this film, and yeah, we're gonna continue to review all the movies. So next, we're gonna do Wrath of Khan, whenever we have time.
My baby.
Yeah, that one's exciting. That's definitely the one of the like original series that I think I like the most, at least of the ones that I've seen so far, that I like the most. It'll be fun to watch it again. Khan. Khan is in it. So Khan is a very fun villain.
Have you seen Space Seed, the original episode where he showed up the first time?
I haven't, no.
It's not required reading. They fill you in on everything in the movie. You know who he is. But it's a really fun episode.
Yeah, I mean, what I find interesting, like the whole Star Trek timeline is so interesting. Like the fact that, we'll talk about this again when we talk about that movie. But in the 90s, there was a eugenics war on planet Earth.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was really bad. It was really bad.
That's why eugenics is completely outlawed.
Mm-hmm.
Completely. If you were found out to be a person who was genetically tampered with, you will go to prison. You will, a nice penal colony. You'll go to a penal colony, basically, which is super, it's really nice.
Okay.
There's a character in DS9 that he finds out as an adult he was genetically tampered with, and it is a freaking shock to everyone, and including him. It sends him into kind of an existential crisis. It's really interesting. Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, because that had a profound effect, and Wrath of Khan is where we get to see the cheat toy. Wrath of Khan is where we get to see the results of that. So yeah, that'll be really exciting. Really exciting to talk about.
I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yeah. It'll be nice to watch it again. And again, like you were saying, that film deals with a lot of very heady Star Trek concepts that this film kind of also does, but it doesn't bog us down in that, and it doesn't it keeps the audience entertained still. But it gives us these heady ideas.
It gives us these really big, broad ideas. You have there's so much going on in the Wrath of Khan. There are so many threads that they tie off, and in some ways also continue to the following films, because everything after the motion picture is connected. Everything starting at Wrath of Khan with all of the subsequent films, they're all happening in a very short period of time. A very short period of time, and the consequences or the actions taken in Wrath of Khan affect Search for Spock, which thereby affects the following film, which affects the following film and the following film. And that's one of the reasons why I love those movies. Even if they were filmed over the course of many years, they take place in a very set, short period of time, which I really, really love.
Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that. All right, yeah, so everyone look forward to that in the future, and us reviewing every movie. Every movie.
All of them.
We're going to do all of them. So you guys have that to look forward to. See what our thoughts are on every film. So I think both of us are pretty, we feel pretty good about this film. There are some things that kind of,
It's not like I always say, it's not required reading, because pretty much everything that happens in this film is ignored in the following films. I don't know about novelizations. I know novelizations in Star Trek is not something I'm completely involved in. I've only read 2. But it's virtually ignored. It's not required. If you want to watch it, it's available.
Yeah. It's out there. If you want to see some nice shots of the Enterprise, definitely go to this one. All right, guys. Well, take care. Peace out. May the Force be with you.
Live long and prosper.
Awesome.